Ole Miss versus Florida crossover week, and is there anything to talk about?
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everybody. I'm Stephen Willis from Locked On Ole Miss. He's Brandon Olson from Locked On Gators, and this is the crossover edition of the Locked On Ole Miss and Locked On Florida podcast with Ole Miss taking on Florida this weekend, and that isn't the whole story. Also, thank you for making Locked On the #1 network in all of America for sports. We appreciate that. We could not do it without you, and thanks for making us your first listen every single day, and a special hello to the everydayers who make the show what it is. Brandon, man, I tell you what, I've enjoyed the heck out of the last 2 weeks. I love all of this banter back and forth. It is a genuinely good place to be. What is it like on the Florida side of what is going on?
We're riding the Lane train here. Especially that we just can't do anything right on the field right now. 38-7 lost to Kentucky. There's
How did that happen?
They folded. That's all I can say. That's really, it is what it is. I think that a lot of guys came out there. Kentucky had a strong first drive. Florida had the interception. Defense went right back out there. And like, Kentucky's not a team that you can just turn the ball over against, because they're gonna be physical and they're gonna grind things out. And Florida did not respond well to that at all for the first time, by the way, in years, which I think is a testament to the kind of, maybe motivator would be the word to say, maybe salesman about Billy Napier, that they had some really rough games, really rough losses, and they never folded the way that they did against Kentucky last week. And so that was tough, but we had Hayden Hansen on the show yesterday, and he was very open that, we just got to, like, that one was so uncharacteristically bad. We're just trying to flush it, get it out of the brain, get right back into the Ole Miss game. Because, I do think that there is value in saying that was so uncharacteristically bad. We know that's not us. I don't know how good they're going to be, but yeah, we're focused on the Lane train, at least for us. And the players are focused on probably whatever their future may look like after the season.
Yeah, it was interesting to see in that game. I think Kentucky went through a whole game without punting, and this is Kentucky we're talking about. But on the other side of the coin at Ole Miss, and listen, I caught a lot of grief about it, but it isn't about the opponent. It could be the Citadel this week. If Ole Miss wins this game, it becomes one of the most massive wins in school history because of where they've been in the last 60 years. It doesn't matter the opponent. And the crowd is kind of soaking that up, which is weird that a 3-6 Florida team is probably going to come into an absolute cauldron, essentially. And then you add the spiciness on top with the Florida and Lane stuff, and it could be, honestly, a pretty fun environment if we're going to be completely real, a night game and all of that. But Ole Miss fans are going to the stadium expecting a coronation, essentially, is what they're going to expect. But that doesn't mean anything, because I do think the game against Kentucky was a bit of an outlier. It was. It's, Dan Mullen ruined my favorite joke of all time for all the Florida fans that are watching. Dan Mullen ruined this. The joke was the Atlantic will beat Florida before Kentucky will. And Dan Mullen ruined that. So there is some good vibes with the Florida people that I've had over the years. Steve Spurrier has been a hero of mine, but over the last 5 or 6 years, Brandon, it doesn't matter who the coach is. It doesn't matter what they try to do. It seems like everything they attempt, they either overstep or just miss the mark.
Yeah. I think that with Dan Mullen, part of it was, look, Dan quit. I don't care what anyone says. Dan quit. He quit on the program. I know people can look at what happened with Billy Napier and they go, never should have fired Dan Mullen. Like, just because you screwed up the hire does not mean that the fire was a bad decision. Dan Mullen was very checked out. I've told the story before. One of his position coaches told me after the Oklahoma bowl game loss, it is like, yeah, that game, I knew Dan was not lasting another full year. He was checked out. I put my house up for sale before the season even started. I put my house up for sale in January. Like, everybody knew at that point that, hey, Dan was done. The Napier hire, he's just not an SEC head coach. It's as simple as that. He's just not an SEC head coach. And it seems like he might be doing something with Georgia coming up, but which, I mean, if that's not the perfect testament to like how he never bought into the Florida culture, that's it. Like, he doesn't hate Georgia. I don't need you to hate Kirby, right? Like, I don't need you to hate a person. I do need you to hate that logo, though, and he didn't do that. So yeah, with Billy, he just wasn't good enough, and Dan just quit. And Dan was also lazy in terms of recruiting. Billy, great recruiter, great program builder, helped a lot with the actual infrastructure at Florida. Just terrible on-field coach, and his ego didn't let him give that up. It's what happens when you're just not good enough at some things.
What happened with Muschamp and McElwain?
Muschamp never got the OC right, and McElwain had just so many weird things happening that it was like, what?
That was the shark thing, right?
Yeah, it's like, what the hell are we even doing here? And so I think McElwain was just a whack job, in like a respectful way. I don't mean it to be like, oh yeah, he's a psychopath. But yeah, Florida, like they've gotten hires wrong for different reasons. Like with Muschamp, I think that's the risk you run with every defensive head coach or with every defensive coordinator that you hire to be a head coach. I think that's the risk, is that if they don't get the OC right, they're dead in the water. Like, it's as simple as that. Like, I think most people would rather say, hey, I'll take an offensive-minded head coach who might have a crappy defense, but that's going to win me more games than having a defensive-minded coach with a crappy offense. Like, you still need to put up some kind of points. And on defense, like, teams will screw up. Teams will make mistakes. You'll get lucky and you'll get more breaks. So with Muschamp, he did the typical hire a defensive-minded coach. Can't get the OC right, you're not going to last long.
Yeah, interesting. Like the Ole Miss side of the things when they look at the Florida job, and I know there's some back and forth online, and trolls or burners are going at it on Twitter at the moment, but they view it as Steve Spurrier won absolutely everything everywhere he was. He won 11 games twice at South Carolina. Urban Meyer won a national championship at Ohio State and had Utah undefeated. Isn't that just those two coaches were successful, not Florida?
I mean, they were successful at Florida. Like, yeah, they were successful. They were successful other places because they're great coaches. Yes. And I have no problem acknowledging that before Spurrier, Florida's not a program that was winning a lot, right? Like, I don't think anybody is going to, I was going to say, I don't think anybody's going to lie to you there. But people are going to lie to you there. But yeah, like you could say, oh yeah, it was just Spurrier and Urban Meyer. But at the same time, like that's called getting your coaching hire right. Like that's what that is. That's getting things right there. And Florida hasn't done that, partially because their administration, spineless losers up there. But I will say there have been some changes in that administration lately that I don't know if it's going to work out, but I know that the people that I dislike are leaving, and I'm good to say, hey, whether or not you work out, clean slate with the other guys.
Yeah, my point on that was Spurrier and Meyer. Yes, he got it right. They got the hire right at Florida, but that is a bullet point towards Ole Miss whenever you just talk about jobs. Now, the recruiting base, Florida's a populous state. There's 30 million people in this state. It's absolutely nuts how many players. I can't throw a rock without hitting a 4-star in the state. But when you look at the historic things, you can say, well, you had Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, and he's been cooking for the last 5 years at Ole Miss. Florida's been really struggling in this new environment in college football, and the Ole Miss people are just wondering what makes that job better than the Ole Miss job. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that a lot of it does come down to the recruiting. I think that as far as the recruiting base being there, like I know people also go, oh yeah, well, kids in Florida leave the state. They do, right? But guess what? When you compare Florida to any other program or any other state, they're going toe to toe with the best. Like I know people, we have this conversation a lot with LSU fans because LSU jobs open. And they'll go, okay, like, well, people don't leave Louisiana. They've got, whatever of the top 12 or top 15, like they're going to go to LSU if LSU wants them. It's like, okay, like, but when you look at the deeper parts, the depth, the blue chip depth there, like Florida's got 45, 50 blue chips every year, and LSU, like Louisiana, will have those 10 to 12 blue chips, but
Yeah, it's a
Florida
per
will have
capita
way more
argument.
volume. Yeah. Like per capita, I'll give it to you,
Yeah.
Louisiana. I will. But
Yeah.
when we're talking about, okay, like, well, people leave the state of Florida, and it's like, okay, but there's so much talent there that you can leave the state of Florida and still come in. Or that you can have people leave the state of Florida and still bring in a ton of talent there. So I don't get concerned with that. I do think that the investment Florida is really starting to make in getting serious about things, I think that'll help them a lot with this very high NIL figure that is attached with, I'll say, certain head coach hires. That may or may not happen. Who's to say? But I do think that there's a lot of investment there. I do think that, like we could talk about how Florida outside of Spurrier and Urban Meyer don't have that championship success. They haven't had it since Urban Meyer left. And just to compare it to the Ole Miss job, it's like, okay, well, in that time span, how many championships does Ole Miss have? And in that same time span that we're talking about, and in that time before that, like, that's why, like, I don't get when they go, oh, well, outside of Spurrier and Meyer, then you haven't had it. And it's like, okay, then outside of nobody, you don't have it at all. Like, I don't think that that's a great argument to make as to say why Ole Miss would be better or on par with Florida, whatever the argument is. So yeah, most programs, when you take away their best coaches, not great. That's what makes the coaches great coaches.
Yeah, exactly. The point is the argument that Ole Miss fan hears, and this is the Florida fans getting on Twitter. It's like, well, Florida's a turnkey operation. It's a no brainer, all of that. And the reality is, Lane right now has whatever he wants. He is literally a king-like figure in Oxford, Mississippi, where he can make $13.5 million, which spends at about, I don't know, 75% at what is down here. So you're going to make that money even go a little bit farther. But that's the point of that everybody's trying to make on that stuff. Anyway, when we come back, we are actually going to get into the game. I do swear we're going to get into the game. We're going to talk about Ole Miss and Florida and all of that coming up next. The NBA is back, and there's points to get in on the action. I think I read that wrong. Sorry about that, Brandon. The official sports betting partner of the NFL, even if you missed the start of the game or you want a hot hand, FanDuel has live bets bet on everything to who will score the next points to the fourth quarter comeback. Plus, you can even combine your live bets to a same game parlay for an even bigger payout. What is your play, Brandon, on this game? What are you thinking about?
I am so torn on this one. I think I'm gonna take the over in this. Just like I feel like we got to see something from Florida's offense at some point, and I feel like last week, pitiful. Like you got to answer better than you played.
Yeah, I like the idea of the over because, listen, if Lane Kiffin even wants to entertain going to Florida, he wants to put up sparks in this game. So there's going to be offensive points one way or another on this. It helps keep every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com and sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, so really interesting stuff coming up in this game because we just talked about that a little bit during the break. I do think there's a chance for offensive fireworks. The Ole Miss defense, by the way, over the last 3 or so weeks, they've played much better. Now, a lot of that has to do that you weren't playing Georgia, but they have played better. If you can't power run the ball, you're going to struggle. Now, the problem with that is Florida has Jaden Ball, who is potentially one of the better running backs in the entire Southeastern Conference. But the other side of that is there's not much else healthy for the Florida Gators right now.
Yeah, that injury report, going to be very long as it is every week with Florida. I can tell you now, Florida's probably going to have 3 times the number of names that are on there compared to Ole Miss, just because that's why not? Like that's just what life is. Receivers are banged up. Trey Wilson's out for the year. Dallas Wilson's out for the year. You've got DJ Lagway. I don't know what's going on with him fully. Like, he looks healthier than he's looked, but he's still playing.
His confidence is shot.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It is and you got to put DJ Lagway out there. His confidence is already shot because you don't want to wreck the true freshman.
Yep. Which, look, I will say this. If you start Tramel Jones, I'm not going to be mad about it. I'm not just because like DJ's not doing anything for you right now. Like he's just being a liability right now. And so I think that it's just tough for me to, like, I understand the risk of playing a true freshman, but honestly, like, you're trash right now anyway offensively. DJ Lagway can't get things going. I do think that they will hopefully get things better. I think they've got a better game plan situated for this week from what I've been told. And we'll hopefully get to see some kind of traction in the ground game. I want to see more just overall success, especially from the guards. I don't think they've done a good job, but you mentioned, if you can power run, we got Jaden Ball, and we've got, in terms of actual run scheme right now, ever since the firing of Billy Napier, they've been going a little bit away from the wide zone and a little bit more into gap run. And so hopefully you'll see some more there. I do think that they've got the personnel to block that up. It's just, I need to see a little tiny bit more from the guards in terms of when they're actually pulling to, frankly, just light someone up.
Yeah. And Jaden Ball, they use him, or at least they have since the coaching change, everywhere. They split him out. They move him around. Is there a concern that by the third quarter, he's just out of gas?
Not really. I don't get that vibe from him. Like, he seemed like last week, a lot of people seemed like they gave up against Kentucky. Every single down that Jaden Ball was out there, he was hustling and working. So I'm going to say that I think he's got it in him to do whatever he's got to do. He's someone who, he got a lot of touches in high school. He was a big part. And I know obviously high school is different from college, but when we're talking about conditioning, he's also had 2 years now with this strength and conditioning program. He's been able to do this. He's been a workhorse when he's been needed, especially as injuries have piled up in the running back room too. I don't get concerned with Jaden Ball's ability to hold up.
One thing that's interesting this game on Ole Miss defensively is the rise of the Ole Miss defensive line over the year, because they had all those high school kids that were playing early in the season on the defensive line, and they've just gotten better and better and better and better. And basically you have 3 5-stars sitting on that defensive line, depending on health. We'll see how Will Eccles is in that game. But I think the physicality is the important thing. You need to go and try and beat up Florida. You need to bring the fight to them, and you need to score multiple times early to where there's incentive for them to let go of the rope. Because I heard a stat in that Kentucky-Florida game that Florida hasn't come back from a deficit more than 10 points since the 60s. How is that possible?
Since the 60s?
That it sounded like that would have said. I could have got it wrong, but they did come back from 10. That was a Tennessee game about a decade ago. But the way they said it was a long way, to the point where my eyes just kind of perked up.
Yeah, I think they said that wrong.
Okay.
Because I think even just a year or two ago they were down a good bit against South Carolina, came back on the road and won that one with Graham there. So maybe it was. Yeah, I don't know what it could have been. It could have been in that series. It could have been, I don't know what it could have been, but no, they're God, that would be miserable. That would just be truly miserable.
Yeah, it's just like, if that happened, you heard that number, you just perk up and you're like, the dog thing where you turn your head around, it's like squirrel. It's like, what was that? And it will be interesting to see. I do think that Florida, like I said, I grew up liking Florida. I had a Danny Werfel jersey when I went to college. That's how old I am. But when you look at this Florida hire, I think that Lane Kiffin, they're going to try really hard. Everybody's going to try really hard. The little Giants and Danny O'Shea replacing him, they're probably coming after Lane Kiffin right now too. But I do think that it's not as turnkey as Florida fans think, and it's not as much of a done deal as Ole Miss fans think.
Yeah, I will say don't think it's a done deal by any stretch. Um, I will also say that, I think that it sure not as turnkey, right? I think that
Mhm.
if DJ Lagway had taken the developmental steps that a lot of people thought he would take, then you could say, yeah, it's you got a good base there, you got your QB, but now you don't have the QB. You got to figure that out. Losing 4 of your 5 starting offensive linemen, or 3 of your 5 starting offensive linemen, but the 2 that are coming back haven't exactly been exceptional this year. So I think that there's a good bit that you can look at and say, all right, it's not as turnkey as people think. But I do think that when you talk about as seamless as a 3-6 coaching hire can be, I think you're there because I think you've got 2 back-to-back great recruiting classes that you've had. This 2026 class hasn't had a decommit to this point, which national media will shout out LSU for, and they'll give LSU credit for that. Florida, by the way, just want to throw that out there. I know that you guys hate it, but it is what it is.
LSU's got other stuff going on right now.
Oh yeah, well, I'm just saying, it was the Tuesday after they fired Brian Kelly, and On3 put out a national report, and they were just like,
Yeah.
LSU hasn't had a decommit in the 2 days since we fired Brian Kelly, and it's like, okay, well, we fired our coach 10 days ago, and we still haven't had one. And at this point,
technically, they didn't fire Brian Kelly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was a week later or 2 weeks later. They're going to try and fire him for cause. I was like, come on, man, that's shady.
I would put nothing past that university. I have no respect for them, and I never will. But yeah, I think that for Lane, it's a great spot to come in and be able to compete right away. I do think that you'll have some transfer portal additions if you were to come in. Florida's got the easiest schedule next year that they've had in what feels like my life at this point. I mean, it's just been a gauntlet year after year. So, and watch, I say this now, next year, all those teams that are on the schedule that I'm like, oh, those are winnable games. They're all going to be just God squads because that's how it goes. But yeah, I think that for Lane, this is the spot. And also, I think it's foolish to not acknowledge that throughout his career, it's been no secret that he's been interested in the Florida job. He was interested in the Florida job when they hired Dan Mullen. He was interested in the Florida job when they hired Billy Napier. I don't know why he all of a sudden wouldn't be interested in the Florida job.
I will bring this up. Should the Miami Dolphins job come open, that would sway him.
Okay. Yeah, I don't doubt you. I don't doubt that at all. I think that a lot of guys would like NFL jobs.
Yeah.
I think it'd be great. And I know I don't think it's as enticing, and I don't think it'll happen with Lane, but I also cover the New York Giants, and they just fired Brian Daboll, and everybody's going, oh, get Lane. We've got his college QB here already.
SEO.
Yeah, that's it. That's all they're doing.
All right. When we come back, we will talk about paths to victory in this football game and give our score predictions as well. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast and the Locked On Gators podcast. Stick around. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times help keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts for a project? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer there. And their part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Listen, the Trademaster perks like priority shipping and a dedicated support line, it kind of makes the whole process smoother. So join the free Trademaster program today and score some serious perks like that priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com and sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5. That's all one word. SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. All right, so let's go over paths to victory, and I will go first because I do think the stadium in Vaught-Hemingway has a chance to be a little bit of a cauldron, and they're going there with the idea of a coronation. And the path to victory for Ole Miss is honestly, don't help Florida. Don't turn the ball over. Don't fumble, don't have silly penalties. Don't go for it anywhere. This is a game where a field goal is worth as much as a touchdown. It just is. If Lane plays it by the numbers, Ole Miss will win this game. The problem would be Trinidad throws an early interception. Florida's up 7-0. Next thing you know, you're in the third quarter and it's a tight game. And those Florida players, they start to believe a little bit. And if that happens, they have the talent that can make you hurt. They do on that side of the field. So I think that the important thing in this ball game, Ole Miss just needs to play a good game. They need to play clean, and Lane needs to not get in his own way.
Yeah, you don't want him running the football with a defensive lineman like 4 times, even if it's been stopped a few times already. You don't want that to happen again.
No.
Just wasn't sure. He seemed to think it was a great idea last year.
If it didn't work the first 3 times, it's surely going to work this time.
Yeah, it's going to work this time. And look, like, to his credit, it hadn't gotten stopped all year. So yeah. I get it. But once it does get stopped a couple of times, you should probably go, let's just put this one in the pocket for the day. But I do think for Florida, you need to have your offense or your quarterback specifically not shoot the entire team down. Like when you look at the losses that Florida's had this year, USF, horrible quarterback play. LSU, you lost by 10. Your quarterback threw 5 picks, and one of them was a pick 6. Miami, horrible quarterback play. Texas A&M, horrible quarterback play. Like last week against Kentucky, 3 picks in the first half by DJ Lagway. You need DJ Lagway, or if at some point you turn to Tramel Jones, or if Tramel Jones rotates in at some point, you need your quarterback to not shoot you in the foot. You can run the football, especially when you're, not putting yourself in a 2nd and 15, or when you're not putting yourself in a 3 touchdown deficit because you felt like just playing hot potato with the football. So I do think that just your offense, your quarterback specifically, not shooting yourselves in the foot, vitally important for this team. Defense, you need to do what you've done this entire year outside of that Kentucky game. Like, you do that and the offense will have a chance. I think that, honestly, last week, I think that was the point where you just see the offense threw a pick, defense never bounced back. And it's entirely possible that that was the straw that broke the camel's back defensively. That it's just like, you know what, we've spent this whole season, we've spent fighting our asses off and keeping this team in the game. And all we've ever asked of this offense is, hey, give us 20, 25 points, like 20, 25 points. Just give us that. They have scored over 20 points in 2 Power 4 football games. And they won both of those, by the way. That was Texas and that was Mississippi State. But every other game, they've scored 20 or fewer, and they've lost that against Power 4 teams. And so I think that for the defense, it's, just hold tight and trust the offense. And quarterback specifically, just try not to screw up my Saturday for once this season. I would appreciate that.
And I will say this, Brandon, you can put this in your back pocket. Ron Roberts and Lane Kiffin. Ron Roberts has had Lane Kiffin's number at Baylor, at Auburn, and last year at Florida. Going up against that offense. But honestly, Trinidad Chambliss is a little bit different of an animal. Whenever you had Jackson Dart and Austin Simmons, to some extent, they would load up on throw it to the stars. Trey Harris would get 12 catches and there wouldn't be a plan B. That isn't happening with Trinidad, so we'll have to see exactly how that looks. I think
Trinidad's legs too, that's going to be different. I feel like Jackson Dart didn't use his legs enough last year. I feel like Trinidad's more willing to do that.
Yeah, it should be interesting. I think Ole Miss wins this game. It's going to be a relatively slow start for both teams. Ole Miss is going to have a second quarter really similar to what not necessarily happened Florida and Kentucky, but just a run towards the halftime. So look at that. It'll be 27-14 is the prediction I'm going with. Ole Miss wins the game.
Buckle up. I am going. I already said the over, which the over set at 53.5.
Yeah.
So I already said the over there. I'm going to say Florida's winning 30-27. And I'm going to put this out there because I know there's already people who have already checked out just because I said Florida's winning. I know who the better football team is here. I know who the better coach is here. I know who the home team is. like I said, last year, I said Florida was going to beat Ole Miss, and it happened, and I knew then Ole Miss was the better football team. Sometimes college football, it doesn't matter about who's the better football team. Sometimes it's like WWE. They're just like, let's do the better story is what we're going with. And so for that reason, I'm going to be wrong, but I'm picking Florida to win this game. Because I feel like I have to, for the story of last year was Billy needs to beat the guy that everybody wanted him fired for, which is Lane. This year, it's I want to see the guys, specifically on offense, show out for the guy that might be their head coach next season.
So what do you have going after the game, your live stream plans and all that?
The second the clock hits 0, we're going live on the Locked On Gators YouTube channel.
All right, it'll be about 30 minutes. So you can probably catch both of them afterwards. So you can check out Brandon first, then you can come over to Locked On Ole Miss, and we'll be talking about the game about that point afterwards. So Brandon, thank you very much for doing this. And this has been the Locked On Gators and Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see everybody later. Take care.